Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host. My name is Shane, and I've got an eyelash hanging somewhere in this eye right here, and it's driving me absolutely crazy. I'm going to try my best not to spend all stream, trying to get that out of my eye. I hope you are all doing well. I hope the world is treating you nicely. Figment, you use the lowercase o, but for tall people with big heads, I guess that's okay. Either way, hi. I'm glad to see you. Hope you're having a good one. Actually, I kind of like the zero better than the o. I think it looks better. Yeah, I don't know what's up with the Twitch bot stuff. Let me see if I can restart Streamlabs. It was working in one of my... I was in a friend's stream the other day, and it was working fine. No. Actually, I like the O. It actually looks a bit more in proportion. But all right. I've turned it off and on again. Hey, look at there! Magic! Have you tried turning it off and on again? So, hiya Vipers. What's up, Figment? Hey, KP. Greetings to everybody. Foggage. Foggage drops the opinion hat like off the bat. Off the bat. Alright, here we go. How will the world respond after Russia invades Ukraine? So this is already assuming that it's just inevitable. Okay, so... Also, hi. What's the opinion? The world's not going to respond well. And I don't think that... at this point, I'm sort of becoming convinced that Putin doesn't really want to invade the Ukraine. I think that what he wants to do is posture a whole lot and then try to exact some version of, I don't know, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Appeasement out of the world right now. The Russian economy has really gone downhill. They put a whole bunch of eggs in the energy department basket, and after 2020 and 2021, when stuff like oil fell through the floor because nobody was traveling around, their economy is actually kind of in a bad spot. Russia also has pretty clearly lied about how badly COVID has been in their country, and they have been trying to keep a pretty big rap on exactly how bad it got in especially their rural areas that don't have good access to healthcare. And I think that at the moment, Putin is likely trying to do something to distract the rest of the Russian populace, and especially the Russian rich diplomat people, from the fact that Russia is in a bad spot right now. And I feel like he doesn't really want to start a war. Now, does that mean he won't start a war? No, because if he doesn't get what he wants, he might try to take Donetsk or part of Ukraine anyway. But I feel, and this is again, I'm wearing the opinion hat, so you can't go bet on this in the international market right now, right? I feel like he's just going to try to do something crazy, and I don't think that he was really expecting the world to get as up in arms as they are right now. I really think that he thought this was going to be like another Crimea situation where he could just kind of slide into Ukraine and grab a big chunk of it and nobody would give a crap. But I don't think that he really felt like this was going to have as much of a blow up as it did. I think part of that response is because people have started drawing comparisons between him trying to take over Ukraine and stuff like, Germany trying to take over Austria or Germany trying to take over Czechoslovakia. That kind of stuff doesn't go well with historical parallels. But the idea here that I feel is going on is that he wants to distract the people inside of Russia from what's going on. He wants to project a position of strength. And if he can get even minor reconciliation on his terms, he's going to spin this as a gigantic win. And he's going to try to blow this up as him pushing around the West. And I think that he's already gotten some benefit out of this, especially because Germany has had a really hard time coordinating their response to this crap, because Germany has basically tied themselves to Russian oil and energy for about the next 20 to 30 years or so. And inside of Germany, there's already been some kerfuffle with the military saying some things that don't necessarily line up with the official government stance. And then there are some people in the Navy that said some stuff, and a dude ended up having to quit because of it. And I feel like the Germany situation is actually being taken as a bit of a warning that if you get in bed with the dogs, you wake up with fleas. And not being able to exercise unilateral sovereignty because you've tied yourself to the devil, well, guess what? Now you're stuck. So I feel like Russia is not as interested as invading as they seem. And I believe, if I had to make a guess or give my opinion, which you asked for because you have the hat, right? I feel like what's going to end up happening is they're going to do some saber rattling. There might even be some flyovers where some Russian fighter jets break Ukrainian airspace. There might even be some minor border maneuvering kind of stuff, but I don't think Russia is actually going to invade Ukraine at this point. If they do, I think that there's going to be an overwhelming response internationally. And I really think that China is even going to get behind sanctioning Russia because, I mean, China hates Russia anyway. So there you go. I hope that I hope that answers your question. I don't think we're going to end up at war, but it's a non-zero chance. I think that America posturing in the last couple of days like we're going to send over somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 troops has really put a damper on Putin's spirit. He's definitely not going to want to invade if he has the chance of shooting an American. And of course, America would post those pretty far away from the border, but, you know, even so. It's only opinion if it's from the history region of Twitch. Otherwise, it's just sparkling hypothesis. I love that. I appreciate that. Let me catch up. Kelly, hey, what's up? Welcome. You bet some of the Biden administration are thinking along the same lines. Yeah, Boris Johnson is in trouble right now. Boris is under official police investigation now. That came out late last night, early this morning, and that has not gone over very well. His support among even his party now is underwater. And he's only probably about maybe 5 to 10 votes away from being no confidence, which is absolutely, completely unexpected. When he won the last election, I really thought we were going to see him in power for the next 8 years. I really did think that he would never call an election until he was constitutionally required to. And if they end up pushing him out, that's going to be a really odd situation. Support for Labor right now is as high as it was back when Tony Blair was the PM. And that was like the late 90s, right? So it's been a long time since Labor's had as much support as they do right now in England. Okay, so that was an opinion hat right off the top. I don't care. That's cool. I love this stuff. This is why I'm here, right? So we are here. It's on a Tuesday night, which means it's viewer request night. This is sort of a weird / monumental kind of viewer request because, numbers are largely arbitrary, but we're at number 50. 50 viewer requests. Holy crap, that's crazy. The fact that we've done basically a year's worth of viewer request streams is really cool. Labor is not Boris' party. So Boris is the head of the Conservative Party. The opposing party, who are more liberal, are the Labor Party. So yeah, like, and David Cameron was the last Labor PM, but Tony Blair was the guy that was PM back when the Gulf War hit, and then Labor kind of dipped for a little while because, well, that was kind of sketchy stuff. But anyway, it's not looking good for Boris. It's not looking great. I don't know if he's going to survive this. He's trying really, really hard, but I don't know if he's going to get ousted. No, this is not the rise of Corbyn. Corbyn's not even the head of Labor anymore. Corbyn is effectively a backbencher if he's going to be involved in the government at all. Conservative Tories are like Republicans. Yes, in that the Conservatives and Tories are more conservative. However, I would like to... Yeah, kinda is the right word here. The Conservatives in England used to be... Now they're changing a little bit in the last, say, 6-7 years or so. But the Conservatives in England would not be able to run as Republicans in America. The American left-right balance is really far off from the sort of pan-European left-right balance. Now, England itself and the UK in general is a little bit more... like their middle point is significantly left of where the United States middle point is. Europe is even a bit further, like the continental Europe, especially EU countries. They're even a bit further to the left than England or the UK. So, but the comparison is roughly analogous. Like, anyway, you know what I mean. You said David Cameron, but I'm gonna pretend you said David Carradine. Yeah. Hey, Sci-Fi, what's up? Who came up with Moscovite for destruction? You want to slap? Oh, that was me. Come on, man. Bernie would be a moderate in the UK. No, Bernie would probably be... he would probably be a pretty open Labour member in the UK. Somebody like Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney would be probably a moderate left kind of person. I don't know. That's not a good example. John McCain would have been like... he would have probably been a member of the Labour Party, probably. Like Lisa Murkowski would totally be in the Labour Party. Who are the other Republicans that sometimes vote? I don't know. We could play this forever. Fun fact, welcome to the Jungle music video. Actually contains footage from Belfast, not Los Angeles. Yeah, it's because it was cheaper to film over there, I would suspect. Kirsten Sinema would probably be... well, I mean, she's technically a moderate in America. She'd probably still be in the Tory or the Labour Party. It's just hard to say. Like it's hard. The big deals over here are not the same big deals over there. You mix up Romney and John Kerry. That's fair. They both lost presidential elections, right? Mutters an annoyed Arizona voter. You got 4 more years for cinema, by the way, to completely overhaul her viewpoints. And everybody's talking about, and I actually had a long sit down and think about this the other day because a whole bunch of cinema's donors are backing out. And my initial gut reaction was, man, she's in big trouble. But then I remembered, like, no, she's actually not that big in trouble. But she's got 4 years to make it up. And even if they primary against her, the way that Arizona runs its primary situation is they have open primaries, and basically anybody can choose which primary they want to vote in. And Sinema will draw most of the independents in Arizona into the Democratic primary, and she'll probably win the Democratic primary against somebody that is significantly further left than her. Now, if they ran somebody that was a moderate Democrat against her, it would be a significantly harder race for her. But what is inevitably going to happen is they'll pick somebody that's probably a representative from Arizona that's probably significantly more liberal and more outspoken on the left, and they'll run that person against Sinema in a primary, and then the independents will kind of glom on to Sinema because they enjoy somebody that sits in the middle of the road, and that's going to let her win. And then those same independents will probably tip the vote for her again in the general. So there we go. She's a Republican. I don't know. The big litmus test for Republicans are things that she fails. Specifically, she's pro-abortion, and that's almost a death sentence if you are. Oh, that was a bad pun. You do not get elected in America as a Republican supporting abortion. It's just not something that happens. Are we talking Russia? Yeah, well, we're supposed to be getting to Russia. And actually, this is a really long stream, so I do need to get on with it. Dig on the illegitimate kids. You're liking Kelly so far? Kelly's probably going to get reelected, but he's going to have a tough row to hoe. He's on the chopping block, in my opinion. He might not get reelected. I don't know if I would put money on him in 2022. Okay. Okay, so let's do viewer request stream. Let's talk about Ivan the Fourth. Okay, so this is a viewer request. This is one that you all voted on, and it's kind of a long one because there's a lot of stuff to talk about. This guy was a ruler for a really, really long time, and he's kind of a complicated dude, so we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Also, I don't think that a lot of people know a whole bunch about Russian history, so I have to do a little bit of background material just so that I feel like I have laid down some sort of foundation for us to build on. There will be assassins, and I am almost certain that the assassin command is going to work because I checked earlier and the Discord command worked, so... damn. All right, so... what is Russian history? Well, Russia has a long and very complicated history. It's a very big place. And to begin with, we're going to start with a group of people that were called the Kievan Rus. And the Kievan Rus were a mix of Slavic people that lived along these rivers right here in what is today Russia, eastern part of Ukraine and Belarus, right around in here. Basically, they controlled this area. This big green area right here is the home of the Kievan Rus. They were a mix of these Slavic people and a mix with Scandinavian people. No relation to Charlotte Rouse. So they were based in the city of Kiev, which is right about here. And of course, this is timely because the whole thing with Ukraine is kind of messy. One of the reasons why modern Russia wants the Ukraine back is because it used to be kind of the heartland of what was Proto-Russia. But the thing is, the Kievan Rus don't get to live forever. And they don't call the place, they call the place Russia and not Kevin. It's Kievan. There's a Russian, yeah, like Kievan. The thing is, the Kievan Rus set themselves up as an empire in the 900s, and in 1242 they get straight wrecked by the Mongols. In fact, those people like Genghis Khan. And what ends up happening is that this whole region that we are looking at right here, instead of being one big unified entity, breaks up into about 24 really small, they're not even really kingdoms. They're referred to as duchies. And it's not that kind of duchy, like past the duchy. It's basically just a place where a duke has a seat. It's spelled duchy like this, not past the duchy, come to the left-hand side, or anything like that. That song was originally about marijuana, by the way, and then they changed the lyrics because it wouldn't get radio play if it was. So this region right here is going to break into a whole bunch of small little cities. And how far are we from the Mongol empires? Well, in 1242, the Mongols destroyed the Kievan Rus. So, like, we are talking about the Mongols right now. And there are going to continue to be Mongols in the story pretty much for the rest of the story. Well, I guess some of them are Turks. They're going to be Khanates in the story for the rest of the story. And the biggest of the duchies is the Grand Duchy of Moscow. And this was like, it was centered on the city of Moscow, right? And it had a fairly sizable chunk of territory compared to the rest of the duchies. It was not a big group. It really, really wasn't that big. And the particular family that is going to take over as a ruler here is a group, and I am wrecking my windows right now. There we go. Is a group called the Rurik Dynasty. So the Rurik Dynasty is going to rule in the Grand Duchy of Moscow for a couple hundred years. And this is going to develop quite well. The Rurik Dynasty itself ties back into the old Varangian nobility. If you know anything about the Byzantine Empire, after about the 700s or late 700s, early 800s, the Byzantine emperors began to hire bodyguards from basically Scandinavian families, basically these big Vikings that were their bodyguards, and they're called the Varangian Guard. Some of those ended up getting substantial tracts of land and ended up becoming fairly rich, and they had gone on to marry into the Kievan Rus families. So the Varangians were pretty powerful. The Rurik Dynasty is going to be very proud that it ties back into this storied history, and that actually comes up a little bit later when we get to a guy in just a bit. But the important thing to understand here is Russia is not unified. There are, at this point, if we're looking in the, a little bit forward into like the 1400s or so, there are about 9 of these that are fairly sizable. The Grand Duchy of Moscow is the largest one. And when we get especially to a guy named Ivan III, we are going to end up with, did they have big ears? I don't get that joke if I'm supposed to. I'm sorry. I was surprised that you knew that song is Vipers. I listen to all sorts of music. All sorts of music from all sorts of the world. Oh, Star Trek rap. Oh, okay. I'm with you. Okay. Not the Varangi. The Varangians. And it's spelled differently. Okay, so Ivan the Third. Ivan the Third is this guy. Look how cool he is. Look at this night. I really like this artwork, by the way. This kind of like flower design stuff that's kind of basic. You get this a lot in Russian art. But this is Ivan the Third. He is the... well, he starts off as the prince of Moscow. He looks like old Aristotle. I could kind of see that. It does look like it's from an old illuminated manuscript. I don't actually know the provenance of this particular image. I just found one and it was on Wikipedia, so I felt like it was okay to share, so I ran with it. So this guy's a pretty important dude. He takes over in 1462, and when he takes over, he's going to really put a lot of effort into trying to expand. He's really energetic with his expansion. He has lots of wars. He's very successful in his attempts at trying to unite all of the other duchies. A lot of these other duchies were ruled by kind of offshoots of the Rurik family, so he sort of was almost putting the family tree back together a little bit. And by the time that he's dead, he dies in 1505, he had basically conquered almost all of the duchies. And this had put him into a position where he was almost back to the point of controlling the same amount of territory that the Kievan Rus did. So if we look at a map, we can see here that this pink area is what he started with in 1462. And by the time that he was done, this green area had been added to his territory. Now, one thing is important to understand. At no location did Russia at this point have a port on an ocean. They didn't touch the Atlantic, they didn't touch the Baltic, they didn't touch the Black Sea, and they didn't touch the Caspian Sea. So basically, they were still ultimately landlocked. Now, they have some of these rivers, especially the Dnieper, which ends up connecting... Oh, you can't see where I'm moving. It ends up connecting down to the Black Sea, but they didn't have actual direct port cities. And if you know anything about Russian history, you'll know that one of the things that they always want are port cities. Because you got to have port cities if you're going to do big trade. And even though Ivan III was very successful and was very energetic and expanded quite a bit, he still isn't getting the ports like he wants, right? And this is going to be something that is going to end up haunting his grandkid. Cold weather port cities, warm weather port cities, you got to have both. You got to have the warm ports, you got to have the cold ports, right? Unfortunately, cold water comes back into play a little bit later on too, but that's a bit of a mess. All right, so by the time that Ivan III is doing his thing, and he has conquered a lot of the duchies, he ends up taking an interesting step here. He decides that he's going to marry into the Byzantine royal family. Now, the Byzantine Empire at this point had collapsed. It collapsed in 1453, but the royal family, the ruling family of the Byzantine Empire, when it ended, was a group of people called the Paleologoi, or the Paleologos family. And Ivan is going to marry basically the niece of the last Byzantine emperor. And he does this with a very purposeful angle here. Not paleontologist, Paleologoi. Paleologos. He does this on purpose because he, Ivan, kind of has this old idea that Moscow should be the third Rome. Right? So Rome itself was the first Rome. then Constantinople was the second Rome, but Moscow should be the third Rome. And he goes so far as to name himself Tsar, right? Now, if we look at the title Tsar, this comes from a Russian translation of the title Caesar, right? So he claims the title Caesar, and he says that Moscow is the third Rome, and he's married to the Byzantine Empire princess. So he really is kind of playing this angle. It sounds like Caesar. I know. If you say it like it's a rap name, Caesar, you even get there even better. This is also where Kaiser comes from, yeah. But we're quite some way from the Hohenzollerns. Probably not far enough for the Russians, though, right? So, Ivan III conquers all this territory, marries into the royal family of the Byzantine Empire, calls himself Tsar, and decides that he is going to say Moscow was the third Rome. And what's crazy is that there's a little bit of legitimacy to this. Not just him marrying into the Byzantine royal family, but there's that tie back to the Varangian Guard who had territory within the old Roman Empire. And there's also a tie back to Christianity, because Ivan is going to be very, very big on bringing in Christianity and trying to establish this as the thing, right? But at this point in 1505, he dies, and his son, Vasily III, is going to take over. And Vasily looks like this guy. No, he just dies because he's old. We're not to the assassination stuff yet. So this is Vasily III. And he ends up taking over from his dad, middle-aged Aristotle. Hey, Ashmanite, what's up? We have not reached El Terrible yet. We are still in the ancestors of El Terrible. So Vasily is going to take over much where his father left off. And this is going to be, again, with continuing to expand. He's going to try to take over Lithuania. He is going to be the guy that finally puts an end to the control of the sort of last really, really big Mongol group called the Golden Horde. He's going to push them out of the Russian territory. Now, this isn't all of the Khanates. There's still a significant Khanate that's down on the Black Sea coastline right here. That's called the Crimean Khanate. So it's not like we're getting rid of all of the Muslim people. But by this point, by the way, the Golden Horde had converted to Islam. They did so about 1200. So they had been Muslim for a little while, even before they had taken over the Kievan Rus. So there are also going to be Turkish people that were in these larger Khanates, and the Crimeans down here are a Turkish group. There are also the Tatars and the Cossacks, and we'll talk about them individually a little bit later on as we go through. Zeveld, yep. Vasily. And somebody has to throw Khan out, of course. So, what does he do? He finalizes the solidification of the Russian states. He pushes out the Golden Horde Mongols. He's going to try to take some territory in Lithuania because, again, they want those port cities. And Lithuania, at this point, was in sort of a unification with Poland. If you were around many streams ago when we were doing the history of medieval Poland, you'll know that one of the groups that had moved into this area and caused a lot of trouble were the Teutonic Knights, who did so after the Crusades. The Teutonic Order had effectively fallen apart, and nobles within the Lithuania region had married into the Polish royal family. and basically taken over Poland. And for this moment, Poland and Lithuania are effectively the same country at this point, and they control a large territory of land roughly right here. They're going to be one of the big bads that Russia fights quite a bit. And if you thought that Russia and the Polish people today have issues with each other, that goes back thousands of years. But they're still trying to get this port here on the Baltic. Gotta get those port cities, right? Teutonic butts. Capitalism. Nuclear vessels. Are we just doing bad Russian accents all night tonight? I guess. Okay, so here's the thing. Vasily gets old. And he doesn't have any kids yet that are going to be able to take his place. And this is going to cause a bit of trouble. Oh, Joey, you didn't even get to the assassins yet. But have a good night. I'm glad you got to drop in, and I hope that tomorrow treats you better than today. In Tsarist Russia, turnip eat you. Oh, that's unfortunate. That's a really rough turnip if it eats you. Anyway, so I was saying something and I lost my track. Okay, so Wasily's in a bit of a pickle, and that is he's married to a lady that is probably not going to ever have a kid, and he's getting on up in age, so he needs a divorce. And after all of the sort of impetus that Ivan had given the church in Moscow, the church is really powerful. And a lot of the nobles had sort of gone all in with the Christianity thing. And a lot of people really didn't like the idea of Wasily getting a divorce. And they especially didn't like the person that he chose, who was a lady named Elena Glinskaya, because, number one, she was Roman Catholic. And at this point, that's becoming an issue, because now it's like there's a difference between Orthodox Catholic and Roman Catholic, and I don't like mixing the oil and the water. Yeah. You were saying gotta have kids. Yeah, we gotta have kids. Hey, Lumpy, what's up? Let's see if the shout-out command works. Everybody go... Oh, yeah, there we go. Everybody go follow Lumpy Dragon Potato. He's a cool guy. He's a really smart dude. He builds really cool stuff on Minecraft. You have faith in Schmonite, Do Me Proud, or Foggage, or maybe Sci-Fi. What Joey's referring to here is the control of the assassin command. When somebody gets assassinated, you can type !assassin, and it will keep a running total of how many people have been assassinated on stream. Real life is super hectic, busy at work, and shopping for your first home. Oh, congratulations, Lumpy. That is hopefully a healthy kind of busy. Such an adult. All grown up, yeah. We're hanging out here tonight. We're about to take over Russia and kill a whole bunch of people, and yeah. Anyway, so Wasily is going to divorce his wife, which causes a stir. Then he marries a Roman Catholic, which causes an even bigger stir. But on the plus side, she is Slavic. She's a Serbian and in the Serbian royal family. So it kind of is like, a little bit okay. But there are going to be some nobles that are really hacked off at this. Not in the winter. Yeah. So when he was 51, Wasily is going to father a kid named Ivan, who is going to be Ivan IV. And then 3 years later, he dies. And that is going to be really important. Yeah, I know. And see, that's the thing, Kelly. There's a lot of hand waving, and I'm the czar waving and sending letters to metropolitans and converting to different versions of Catholicism, it ruffles a lot of feathers. To quote God, don't. Unless you're the Mongols, they respect the not in the winter rule. Yeah, pretty much. Right? Just take over whomever. Rome also would fight you in the winter. And Napoleon will invade you during the summer, but stay there long enough to end up in the winter and then get beaten by Russia. So, Ivan III is dead after conquering a lot of stuff. Vasily III dies when Ivan IV is 3. Now, what we going to do? Well, here's the deal. Ivan is 3. Clearly not going to be able to rule. But what ends up happening here is that before Vasily dies, he calls all of the nobles together. And it's important here to introduce the term boyar. The Russian nobles were mostly in a social class called boyars. And these are really rich individuals that are originally kind of hereditarily linked back to the big warrior tribes of the area. So they're sort of like warrior nobles, but just to be honest, the warrior part had kind of given way to political stuff. So, yeah, he's in his terrible 3s, indeed. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Eris is good stuff, and he's a great streamer, and I'm glad that you find his chat interesting. I really enjoy spending time there as well, and I might end up there tonight if he ends up streaming. Okay, so these boyars immediately go, okay. You want to make an Ivan Drago reference because of Rocky 4, but you're too lazy and worn out after work. Someone write it for me. You could just type insert sarcastic Ivan Drago reference here and we'll all giggle at our heads, right? So the boyars are upset that... Okay, I'm sorry. I'm getting my stuff out of order here. Before he dies, Vasily calls all of the boyars together and he makes them swear an oath, basically, to support Ivan, his kid. Right? Don't kill my kid. Just keep him around. Wait till he grows up. Also, please don't kill my wife. And Elena is going to try to be regent. By the way, Vasily dies in 1533. Elena makes it 5 years as regent, and she's really not very popular. Again, she is a Serbian, so she's not technically from Russia in the first place. She grew up a Roman Catholic, and a lot of people still think that she's secretly Roman Catholic. So she doesn't last very long. She ends up getting poisoned by one of the big boyar families, this group called the Shwisky, and they end up assassinating her. So there you go. But what that means is that now there's an 8-year-old kid. The ticker is off. What is it supposed to be? It says 25. That's about right. Is it supposed to be higher or lower? We did have a China stream, and I don't know if you were here, but like 10 people got assassinated on that last China stream. And when we do China a couple of nights from now... No, it's total. It's cumulative. So like 25 people since the beginning of the inset of... Yeah. It's rolling over from the beginning when we first turned it on. I guess I probably should change the wording on that. Oh, no. Yeah, I don't know if I can do that or not. I mean, I guess I could manually go in and reset it, but that would be kind of annoying. I don't know. Maybe I should. I don't know. I'll consider that. Let me know. What do you all think? I mean, I'm clearly not going to do anything right now, but if you think it needs to reset every stream, I can see if I can make that happen. Anyway, so we've got little 8-year-old Ivan. Little kid. He's in a bad spot. His mom's dead, been poisoned, and these big boyar families are going to basically take over his life. And if we believe Ivan's own letters that he wrote later in his life, he was treated pretty horribly. Now, I say if we believe. Now, why would I say if we believe? Well, just to be honest, everybody is a little bit biased, and Ivan doesn't really like appearing weak. It's never really been in his thing to look weak. So, I don't know. I don't know if we can necessarily completely take his word on these things. Not Boyardee. Ha ha ha. I knew somebody was going to try to make that joke. So, Ivan really hates these regents. They're two big families, and we could go really deep into this, but we really don't have time. There's the Shuisky and there's the Belsky family, and these are two sort of debating and leading boyar families, and they sort of switch regency back and forth between the two of them. And if we take Ivan's word, he gets treated really badly. There are a couple of instances where he said that he had to beg for food and went days without it. There are some instances where he said that he basically didn't have any clothes and that he kind of had to wear whatever he could and ended up like trying to make clothes out of rags. Apparently, the only thing that they really... I guess I'm just going to have to type like all of these words all of the time now. This is how you say it. I know. I just feel like I have to. So, if we take Ivan's word, they don't treat him very well. And according to his letters, they basically only treated him well when there was some person visiting Russia, like if some big church figure decided to come to Moscow, they would fatten Ivan up and clean him and put him in clothes and sit him on the throne, basically threaten to kill him if he said anything. And he would show up for royal appointments and engagements and stuff like that. But then as soon as the person left, they would just throw him back in his room and lock the door. But I don't, again, they probably did treat him pretty bad. And they probably did abuse a lot of their power. And this is absolutely going to be something that shapes Ivan to be the person that he is. Because he starts plotting with the leader of the Moscow church when he's 15. And what he's plotting basically is to get these boyars either thrown in jail or killed. And at even in his early teenage years, he manages to work plots so that some of the people that are kind of trying to act in front of him either thrown in jail or even killed. Does anybody really expect somebody with the nickname The Terrible to have a sunshine and happy backstory? Well, if anybody is trying to put together the criminal profile on Ivan to make him a mass murderer, he did apparently abuse animals as a child. Apparently tortured some cats to death. Hurt People, a memoir. Right? So, Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a red flag, right? That means things, right? That's not a nothing. So he's a messed up kid. Uh, by the time that he's 16, he has orchestrated enough power through the church mostly that he pushes the big boyar families out. And in 1547, he gets the leader of the Orthodox Church in all of Russia to crown him czar. And this is the first time that anybody is actually officially recognized as a united ruler of Russia. This is a big deal, and he really goes all out. The whole thing is just really over the top, and he does the whole thing with all of this really big Roman imagery. Has stuff done in Latin, dresses up in kind of costume stuff, and he's really going to play on this whole idea that he is imperator, that he is in absolute control. He plays up this idea that he has been chosen by God, and that means that he is the leader of the church and has not just temporal political authority, but also divine authority. This guy is like, even at 16, he's already doing the cult of personality stuff. And came into popular consciousness with the release of Silence of the Lambs. Oh, the kid stuff. Yeah. Or the torturing of animal stuff. Anyone who listens to people who unalive other people in a not very fun way, podcast shows, knows that animal unaliving is a sign of no good, very bad sign. Right. Correct. I appreciate the succinct way you stated that, Figment. So, he's the emperor now. He is the czar. And he is going to follow that up not too far away with a marriage. And I typed this woman's name out because she's going to be really important. Her name is Anastasia Romanovna. And you probably recognize that last name if you know anything about Russian history, because this is the Romanov family. And if you ever wondered how they managed to take over Russia, this is their foot in the door. Chosen by God. If you had a quarter for every one of those ruler dudes, yeah, pretty much. How old is he when he's czar? He's 16. 16 when he becomes czar. And doesn't really get that he's the czar completely, because he still sort of like runs around town with his buddies and beats people. And he's got a gang. They're like, you know, the Droogs from what is it called? That movie that I'm talking about that Stanley Kubrick did that I can't say the name of. That somebody will type here in the chat in just a second. Clockwork Orange, thank you very much. You recognize that first name, yeah. Tori Mrs. Under the Pink. Yeah, pretty much. So, Anastasia Romanovna. Here she is. This is a statue of her. It's actually on a church in Moscow. Steampunk Apple, there we go. So here she is. All right. They get married not too long after Ivan becomes czar. And here's the thing. And I say this because I'm going to try my best to present him as a human, and we'll just let it play as we go. It really does seem like they love each other. It really seriously does. Anastasia Romanovna was one of the boyar families that had not been involved in the regency. They were very rich. They had the same sort of ties back to the old Varangians that Ivan did, and it really seriously does seem like they actually seriously loved each other. For the next several years of Ivan's life, it really does seem like Anastasia was kind of like a sounding board for him. And we have records of him saying some things in court and then, going back and talking with his wife. And then he makes a decision that seems to be moderated after that. He's not even a good puppetish king. He's just a punk, pretty much. Is it ahistorical to picture them like Jennifer Grey and Charlie Sheen in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? No, I think that's perfectly fair. If you wanted to carry that a little bit further, this is like, Judd and Molly from Breakfast Club too. I'm going to put her little earring in my earring and walk off the football field. Smoke up, Johnny. Anyway, that trope is fairly applicable here. Anyway, what does he do though? He takes over as Tsar. He has unlimited power. What you gonna do? Don't you forget about me. He's going to start doing a whole bunch of reforms. And this is like all the way from the bottom to the top on a very local level. One of the things that he does to try to give some of the people in these little rural hamlets a little bit more inclusion in advising, basically, is that he creates local councils. And these are people that have sort of a pipeline to the Tsar himself, through several layers of bureaucracy, mind you. And this is fairly welcomed because there are a lot of people that were very rural farmers in Russia at that point. However, he also does some things that's kind of sketchy. When he makes these local councils, he sort of draws boundaries, and he starts making it illegal for peasants to just randomly move around. They really are supposed to stay within the boundaries of their local council zone. And if that starts sounding like, I don't know, feudalism, it's because it is. This is basically the beginning of Russian serfdom. And this is spelled with an E, not a U, right? If he has unlimited power and has a nickname, the Terrible, you're fine with forgetting about it. On the big government level, what is he going to do? Well, he decides, you know what? Here's one of the things I'm going to do to keep an eyeball on all of these nobles. I'm going to make a council, and the Council of Nobles is going to report. I'm going to call them up every now and then. I'm going to ask them their advice, and mostly I'm going to make sure that they understand that I'm in charge. And this is actually kind of a limiting factor for him because he's overestimating his own power at this point. And the Council of the Boyars, which sort of is like it's the beginning of the Duma, right? The parliament of Russia. This is going to be kind of a weird thing for him because he calls this group together so that he can flex on them, and then they basically flex back on him. The biggest power that they have, supposedly, is to fix the problems that come out of these local councils, but when they gang up together, they do sometimes push him around. Smurfdom, yes. They smurf his smurfing day. That's all I can say about that, and I pardon my smurfing. He is going to go all in on the Orthodox Church, and he puts the Orthodox Church inside the government. He gives the leadership of the Orthodox Church, especially the Metropolitan of Moscow, very high advisory roles within the government. He is going to have, again, a very, very literal interpretation of the concept of divine right. He's going to feel like he is God's chosen leader. He prays all the time. He is really, really devout in what he thinks is Christianity. And he takes that really far. When he tortures people, he tends to torture them using what had become traditional methods that sort of effectively come from Dante's Divine Inferno, or Divine Comedy, the Inferno part of the Divine Comedy. So if you've ever read this, you'll know that certain people are tortured in hell with certain punishments based on their crime. And he kind of takes that literally. So he'll do stuff like burn people's skin off. He'll do stuff like kill people in the winter by putting them outside naked and pouring cold water over them until they freeze to death. He really feels like the thing about being God's chosen is that he's also the scourge. Like he's the punishment of God on earth. And he kind of enjoys that part of it. Probably a bit too much. And I'm being sarcastic there because it's clear that he enjoys this way too much. He also hates Jewish people. In some of his cities that he controls, he basically tries to pass laws that force Jews to convert. And in all of the areas that he ends up taking over, one of the things that he's going to do is force Jews to convert or get killed. He kills probably thousands of Jews over the course of his reign. And he didn't really keep a good number of that either. You're chosen by a goddess. Ivan's Inquisition, not unexpected considering his youth. There we go. Your cat to deliver her food and pets. Yeah, exactly, right? Bastet is, or I don't know, it depends on if your cat is violent. If your cat is violent, it might be Sekhmet, right? Drops another quarter in your right. Okay, so he also overhauls the legal code and makes a whole bunch of things like morality laws. He tries to codify Christian beliefs into Russian law. He's also going to have a lot of trouble economically. And one of the things that faces him throughout his entire reign is the economic state of Russia. Russia, when he took it over, was already in debt. And it had been in debt going all the way back to his grandfather, Ivan III. Those big wars that Ivan III had brought in to conquer all of these regions had not been cheap. His dad had paid down some of that. This is Vasily III had paid down some of that debt. But when Ivan III took over, he had inherited yet more debt because the boyars that were in charge had run more debt up, mostly through giving themselves big parties and spending money that the country didn't really have. So he took over a country that was in debt, and he will never really be out of debt. He'll never really completely get Russia out of debt his entire reign. And this sort of like eats at him because he knows partially that it's not his fault and there's not really anything that he can do about it. He does raise taxes pretty high, and that doesn't solve all of the problem. And he starts launching wars here in just a bit, and that's not going to help either because wars are expensive. Hey, Ivan, slow down. Why are you rushing? I heard he killed someone because they gave Anastasia a foot massage. He killed lots of people. And there's not really a tally. If I had to like ballpark how many people ended up dying either directly from his say-so or in the course of being tortured by somebody in his group, basically the number of people that he had killed outside of war, I would probably put it at probably somewhere like maybe 7,500,000 people over the course of his reign, because he rules for a long time. I mean, he doesn't die until 1584, and we're just now in 1552. So he's got 32 more years of killing. And he's not even to the crazy part yet. This is not even the crazy part. The crazy part comes in a bit. And it gets nasty. It's pretty bad. Everybody go follow David. It's pretty bad, but everybody go follow David. Are you going to work? Come on, bot. You worked earlier in the stream. There we go. Massive. That is too much, sir. Too much on living people. Now is not the time for fear. That comes later. Just hold on. We're not there yet. Show me how you work, indeed. So, he also decides that he needs to overhaul the military. And this is an attempt to try to make the military less expensive and an attempt to try to make the military more mobile. One of the things about the Russian army prior to this is that they had some numbers, but it was lots of like marching and, trudging. They did have some horse, but it was pretty expensive, and they had to, try to keep the boyars happy because they were the ones that supplied all the horse. Anyway, the new core of his army is going to be a group of people that are called the Streltsky. 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 Like this. And they look like this. Follow me. My stream is also in debt, has killed for foot rubs, and started ill-advised wars. So this is a Russian Streltsky. And what we see here is a weapon that's called an arquebus, which was an early version of a firearm. It was a matchlock. You can see the match fuse actually running down here. This, by the way, is a big honking battle axe. You've seen one of those where it's just a stand, right? So the Streltsky are a bit multi-purpose. They are arquebusers, but when it comes to it, they can break out this big battle axe right here and chop the crap out of people. And do so with a bit of relish. That's one angry garden gnome. Yeah, Yeah. These people are not nice. But anyway, this is going to be the new core of Ivan's army. And he has a standing unit of arquebusers. That basically means they're professional soldiers. And he pays them year-round. And they answer directly to him. And all of the other stuff, like the horses and the infantry and all of that stuff, is going to be called up as he feels like they are needed. He's not going to have a standing army of everybody because that gets way too expensive. But this is when he starts reaching out to other groups of people, especially peoples like the Tatars, who are a Turkish people that are very fond of horses, and the Cossacks. Now, this is not the Cossacks that you're probably thinking of from, like the 1800s, where they have the big plumed helms and ride back, on horseback, and they're sort of the standard Eastern European horse soldier. These are the original Cossacks, who are ethnically Cossack, and they come from a region that's kind of like right over in here. And Ivan is going to reach out to these people and make some overtures, and they end up becoming sort of the backbone of Ivan's horse soldier stuff, his armed soldier horseback troops, right? They have a fancy dance too. They do indeed. So he's modernized a little bit of the military, and of course, what do? Well, first off, you start conquering people, and he conquers a lot. He's going to start taking land over here. There's a big city called Kazan, which was the headquarters of one of the Khanates that had sort of popped up after the Golden Horde fell. He also takes Astrakhan, which is a little bit further out this way, and he's going to eventually, later on in his life, right before he dies, take Siberia out here with the help of the Cossacks. Now, there are other big players that he has to handle. One of them is the Kingdom of Poland and Lithuania right here. And another one is a group of people that sit right around here. They're called the Crimean Khanate. These are both going to be enemies of his. But one war that is going to consume him for about the next 20 years is when he tries to basically invade Latvia and Estonia. So this region, let me throw these borders up for those of you that don't know. All right, so this region right here used to be united in a region that was called Livonia. This is Lithuania here, and Lithuania and Poland, and basically all of this was one big group at the time. So Ivan's going to try to invade them. What am I doing? Wrong buttons. And it doesn't go so great. The Livonian War is going to be incredibly money heavy, and it's not really going to ever get him any land. And it gets really involved. He actually moves in and takes over the area really easily. But then the guy that was the noble, that was the head of Livonia, actually surrenders. Instead of to Ivan, he surrenders to the king of Poland, which then technically makes Livonia Polish, which then means that Ivan has to fight with Poland. But at the same time, the Polish are going to start a war with Sweden, and Livonia, this little region right here, ends up drawing in the Russians, the Swedes, and the Polish, and the Lithuanians, and becomes this giant mess, and it's really sort of a quagmire, and nobody can really get out. Livonia, Michigan is where your mother-in-law lives. Oh, well, cool. Well, there we go. I did not know that there was a Livonia, Michigan, but that makes a lot of sense because I know that there were a lot of Eastern European migrants that ended up in the Midwest, especially places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. Was any of that worth the land? It had ports, and it had ports on the Baltic. So that's what Ivan was originally going after, were the port cities. The Bay of Finland, which is this little piece right here, would have been completely his, and all of this coastline right here would have been his. And to him, it was worth it initially, and then he really couldn't back out. It really couldn't back out because he was kind of stuck. And has many computer other yeah, more ports, right? Got to have the USB and the HDMI. You've never understood how the Swedes or the Vikings were feared with that bouncy accent. Sweden had an empire in the 1500s that rivaled basically anybody else in Europe. During the 30 Years' War, the Swedes were one of the... like Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden was one of the biggest players in basically protecting Protestant Christianity in Europe. And his involvement in the 30 Years' War against the Holy Roman Empire was one of the big factors that sort of kept Protestantism going. Denmark is where it's at. Well, Sweden and Denmark were actually united at that point. The Kingdom of Sweden owned Denmark. So the Swedish territory at that point was basically all of this. And they ended up controlling part of northern, what is today Germany, because they took a whole bunch of land from the Holy Roman Empire. The Danes were the Gryffindors of Scandinavia. I don't think we can go that far. I don't think we can go that far. Maybe in the 600s we could say that, or the 700s we could say that. But at this point, no, the Danes were not the Gryffindors. So it was Denmark, and then no, Sweden had conquered Denmark. They had been beaten severely. Yeah. Liony show-offs. You're insulting my homeland. It's just the truth. It's just the truth. I'm not going to apologize. It's true. Anyway, lots of wars. Okay. So at this point, he's done some things that are probably bad. But has he done anything that's really terrible? Probably, but it gets worse. And here's where it gets worse. So this is where he starts becoming the terrible. About 1551, he gets really, really sick. And he thinks that he is about to die. So he does what his dad had done, and he calls all of the boyars together. And at this point, he had a son who was basically just barely born. He was, I think, maybe 1 or 2. His oldest son was named Dmitri. And he calls all of the boyars together, and he tries to force them to take an oath to make Dmitri the next Tsar, because Ivan really did think that he was about to die. And the boyars say no. They go, "We will not select your son. We will not put your family back on the throne. We'll take your cousin. We'll take, cousin Jimmy over there that's from like an offshoot of the family, and we'll put him on the throne, but we will not accept your son." And this makes Ivan real mad. Real mad. And he sort of like vows revenge against them. He's like, "You have spurned me." Yeah, I mean, he's a horrible person, true. But if we're looking at the arc of horrible, I mean, he's at a sort of a high resting level, right? He's at like a 7 out of 10 horrible already. He is about to start angling up to like the 10 out of 10. I don't know. I don't want to put a measurement on animal cruelty. Don't do it. It's horrible. And if you do hurt animals for your it's just bad. He's a horrible person. It's about to get even more horrible. It's just bad. Yes, but there's more. Yeah. So he actually does get better. And he starts thinking about ways to get even. And then something really unfortunate happens. His son, Dmitri, at that time, was very young, and as unfortunately happens to very many children at that time, Dmitri died as an infant in 1552. And I think he was like either 2 or 3 years old at this point. Or a toddler, I guess. Toddler is better than infant. He died really young. And Ivan immediately suspects foul play. Now, all of the historical stuff that we have does not support the idea that this was an assassination. All of the historical stuff that we have points to this just being a really unfortunate situation. And let's be honest, infant mortality and mortality for children was really, really bad. I mean, it happened a lot. You weren't really ever safe, but like if you could make it to 5, your chances of surviving were pretty great. But that's 5 years that you have to make it before, Anyway, it's almost certain that Dmitri just died because of illness. Now, there's a whole bunch of questions about whether or not, or what Ivan got when he got so sick. The leading theory right now is that he got syphilis. I don't know if I completely support that or not, but that's one of the leading things. 5 years of helplessness before the age of antibiotics. Yeah, basically, that's a fair way of saying it, KP. So this is a big deal because it hurts him. Now, he has another son, and he has another son after that. So he's got 2 more sons. His second son's name is Ivan, and his third son's name is Fyodor. And he is just devastated that Dmitri has died. And Ivan the Fourth, Ivan the Terrible. No, not the kid. Like Ivan might have had syphilis that would made him sick. The kid would have. We don't know what the kid died of. And I realize that I said that confusingly. I apologize. So he just keeps on going, and he keeps trying to rule, and he's got armies in the field, and he's conquering some stuff, and he's making some headway against some of the enemies. And then, in 1560, Anastasia dies. And she actually did get poisoned. And Ivan knew it. He knew that the boyars were behind it. He knew that they were trying to get at him, and he got just real mad. Just real. Yes, that is officially an assassination. So he is unfortunately right in the middle of a really unfortunate period of the Livonian War, but he starts scheming, and the foulness and the bitterness starts seeping out basically of his pores, and he is throwing people in jail, and he is killing people, he is torturing people for fun at this point, and this really starts wearing on some of even his friends. And this is actually going to be kind of like the final nail in the crazy coffin. One of his best friends, and this guy may have actually been one of his cousins, was this guy named Andrei Kurbsky. And Kurbsky was in the Russian military, and he was sort of a very close friend and advisor. Here he is, to Ivan. And when Ivan starts basically beating people and torturing people, and basically if you screw up, you're probably going to die, Kurbsky decides to defect. And he leaves the command of Ivan, and he goes over to the Polish-Lithuanian army, and there becomes a commander in their army, and then starts fighting against Ivan. And he does so very successfully, because he knew all of the weaknesses of Ivan's army, and Ivan starts losing ground in Lithuania pretty quickly. And Ivan, at that point, has had all of it he can take. And so he decides it's time to go. And he doesn't tell anybody what's happening. He doesn't tell anybody what he's planning. He just decides one day to leave. So he just walks out of the palace, and he leaves Moscow, and he leaves the region, and just maybe a few days ride away, there's a monastery. And his family had a history of converting to monastic orders at the very end of their lives. And he writes a letter to the boyars, and he says, look, dude, I quit. I'm going to abdicate the throne. You all have broken me, you have destroyed me, and I quit. And the boyars initially are like, we did it. Yeah, we got rid of him. And then they realize that they're in a war, and they realize that this is going to make them look really, really bad. And he had already started publicizing the fact that they were the responsibility of his son's death and his wife's death, and now they're losing, and they don't want to really take over in the middle of a losing war. And some of the boyars go, oh crap, we actually need him, because we don't need a power vacuum in the middle of losing a war. We need somebody to blame it on, because if this all continues to go bad, it's going to make it look bad on us, and we don't want to be the ones holding the bag at the end of this mess that we're in. So, congratulations, you played yourself, right? Exactly. So they send an ambassador to this monastery, and they basically beg Ivan to come back. And he rakes them over the coals, and he goes, I'm not coming back. I'm not going to do it. And they're like, but we need you. You're God's chosen. And he's like, I can be God's chosen here in the monastery. And they're like, what would it take for you to come back? And he goes, you're not going to want to hear it. And they're like, we will do anything. And he's like, for real? And they're like, yes, Ivan, please come back and be our czar again. And he's like, okay, but you are not going to like it. And oh boy, did they not like it. Because this is the terrible. He decides that the only way he's coming back is if the boyars basically give him control of whatever he wants. You've just fallen for one of the classic blunders. I want each of all your firstborns. That's coming, Shmonite. That's it. We're not there yet, but that's coming. Oprichnina. This is a region of Russia that gets placed directly under his control. He is literally and in complete and utter control of every single thing that goes on there. If he wants to walk down the street and kill somebody, nobody can say anything about it. And because he got to pick what parts of Russia were in the Oprichnina regions, he picked all the big cities and all of the big areas that had the most money. It is good to be the king. But here's the crazy thing about it. He would leave parts of the city outside of his official district. Like, he would take the rich part of the cities where they were making all the money and leave the boyars to deal with the slums. Right? So there would be situations where you might go like one block into a city and find yourself in an Oprichnina district, and then go one more block and find yourself back in the boyar-controlled region. Yes, very Russian Orthodox. And Ivan even has power over them at this point. If you are inside the Oprichnina, you are in his control. He can literally do whatever he wants to you. And this is when it gets bad. He has already killed a lot of the Jewish population, and the Jewish people that are left have either been forced to convert or they are living in secret. There is not really lots of open Jewish practice going on in Russia at this time. There are Jewish people there. They're just not out in the open about it. All right. So, beyond Oprichnina, he also makes a group of people that are going to be his supporters, and they're called the Oprichniki. And I have a very famous painting of them. And it's kind of hard to see here, but the Oprichniki are basically his hitmen. His hitmen. And they dress all in black. If they were a musical group, they would absolutely be death metal. Because wherever they went, death followed them. So this is them basically invading a city. And you can see them here on their black horses with their black clothes. They're like ring wraiths, but there's like 600 of them. The Oprichniki were boyars that had never spoken out against Ivan, that he felt like he could trust. At this time, there were about 12,000 boyar families. Now, not all of them were super big and powerful, but by the end of this, there are only going to be about 500 of those families left. Because one of the things that Ivan decides to do is get rid of all the boyars. 95% of them end up exiled out of Russia, forced to take monastic vows, and some of them castrated so that they couldn't come back from that, or just flat out executed. And again, this is like 11,000 plus people that he's kind of wiping out here. And he's doing this because he wants to. And he's getting back at them. And it's just pure vengeance. There's not really anything to go on here but, you messed me up, you killed my wife, I'm now going to kill you. And he took that personally, right? So inching up on the Stalin side of the scale. He'll never match Stalin, but he's putting forth a lot of effort. The Oprichniki is really bad. And this runs for about a decade. A decade of just absolute abject terror, where he is killing people left and right. He is not answering for anything because, I mean, he's in charge. And one of the most horrible examples happens in a big city, the second largest city in Russia at the time, is this city right here called Novgorod. Now, Novgorod was a very big city. It had probably like somewhere between 15 and 20,000 people in it. And I know like today that's not that big of a deal. But in Russia at that time, that was a big city. Moscow probably only had between 25 and 30,000 people. So Novgorod is a big city. And he doesn't like Novgorod because a lot of the boyars that were sort of against him have buildings and homes there, and Novgorod sort of existed as a potential alternative seat of power if somebody wanted to start a rebellion. So he decides that he just wants to wipe Novgorod out. And well, how do you do that? Well, another thing about the Oprichniki is that they were also spies. And so he gets the Oprichniki to go into Novgorod and basically start a false flag operation where it looks like the boyars in Novgorod are going to rebel. Oh, and if they're going to rebel, oh no, we can't have that. So what happens? He marches the army to Novgorod, and at the head of them are the united power of the Oprichniki. Basically all of them. And he lays siege to Novgorod, and for a month, he lets the Oprichniki do whatever they want to. Literally whatever they want to. And there are some horror stories that come out of this. People being thrown into the river and held under with poles. And when they stuck their heads back up, they would get bashed with one of those big battle axes. Some of the stories say that they threw so many bodies into the river that it literally diverted the course of the river. Like they made a human body dam that changed the course of the river that ran through Novgorod. And by the time that they were done with it, they basically just decided to burn what was left. There wasn't really anything left. They effectively killed the population. They sent several thousand people into exile. They sold a whole bunch of people basically into serfdom, and they killed everybody else. Novgorod effectively stopped existing in about 1570. Now, it was still a city after that, but it went from being the second largest city in Russia to basically being a farming village. Just because he didn't like them. Yeah. It's pretty bad. So, he's not really done yet. Because, things happen and he doesn't care for them very much. So, you stay classy, Oprichniki. Yeah, what happens next? Well, if you'll remember me telling you that there was a khanate right down here of Muslim Crimeans. This is one of the big groups that sort of had its sights set on Moscow. And they started to build up an army, and the Livonian War was going really badly at this point. So Novgorod was sort of a way to let some steam off because you're not doing very well in the big war. But while the Russian army is tied up in this region, the Crimean Khanate decides to attack Moscow. And Ivan was in the city and calls the Oprichniki to sort of come defend him, and he gets bad information. He thinks that the Crimean Khanate is coming with 1,000 troops, when in reality they were coming with 100,000 troops. And this is a really seriously big classic blunder, because when they show up, he is absolutely not ready. And he basically bugs out. Like, he leaves the city. He's like, I can't defend you, so I'm going to take my guys and leave. And I'm going to go live in one of my, palaces outside of the city. And you all are kind of up, to your own good. And the Crimean Khanate burns down Moscow. And basically the only building that's left is the Kremlin. And the story goes that when Ivan moved back, or tried to move back, he couldn't even find a barn to live in, because that's how bad the Crimeans had wrecked Moscow. This, by the way, is going down in 1570. The Crimeans end up killing about 160,000 people in this particular invasion, because they not only wreck Moscow, they burn several other cities and kill a big portion of the Russian army. And they utterly destroyed the reputation of the Oprichniki. So much so that Ivan gets really ticked off at the Oprichniki for not doing a better job defending the city of Moscow. And he disbands the group. Now, you might go, well, that was kind of a jerk move, to run away and then blame the people that you ran away with for not doing the thing that you told them not to do. But again, this guy's not nice. He's terrible. He's not called Ivan the Classy or Ivan the Debonair. He's Ivan the Terrible, right? So, this earns him a lot of hatred, because when he shuts down the Oprichniki, the remaining boyars that had basically been living really, really high on the horse. Remember, 95% of the existing nobility had been run off, and all of their stuff had been confiscated and redistributed to those 5% that were in the Oprichniki. So these people had been living really, really high on the ladder, and now Ivan's like, I don't really care for you very much. I'll take from you whatever I want, and you're now just like those other people. That didn't go over so great for him, because he didn't really have any friends left. So he comes up with this plan, and he quits being emperor again. And he gets one of the only remaining boyars that is even kind of in his circle to be czar for about a year and a half. And the crazy thing is, like, this guy that he props up isn't even Russian, really. He's a Tatar. This would have been people that had sort of been in the larger Mongolian Empire, right? He props this dude up, and this guy's sole job is to confiscate land from the old Oprichniki families. And while he's doing this, Ivan, unbeknownst to the rest of the Oprichniki, is in a monastery yelling about how horrible this guy is, right? So Ivan has orchestrated this entire thing. He's like, oh, guys, I'm so sorry. Look, I did mean things to you all. I'm going to quit being czar. I'm going to go back over here, and I'll go back to the monastery. I'll let this guy be in charge. You all seem to like him. And the whole time, this guy's only purpose is get all of the power back away from the Oprichniki and take it into the hands of the czar, so that when you get all of it, I can come back to be czar again. And that's exactly what happens. So Ivan's over here yelling like, oh, no, don't do that to my friends. Oh, no, don't take their land. Don't confiscate their wealth. No, don't do that. But also totally do that. And the boyars end up hating this replacement guy so much that they go ask Ivan to come back. And he's like, oh, guys, come on. I did you so wrong. That's why I'm over here in the monastery doing penance. And they're like, no, you're way better than this guy. Please come back. And he's like, okay. And he does it again. And it works again. I don't know why, but it does. The classic Palpatine, right? So he ends up taking back over in 1576. But everybody sort of sniffs out this mess. They start like they figure out this whole shenanigan thing that went down, and Ivan at this point is so paranoid that he starts doing even really more kind of full-on crazy stuff. For example, his oldest son at this point, this would be second son, who's Ivan Ivanovich, basically Ivan the Second, or Ivan Jr., right? Ivan Jr. had gone out with the military to try to push the Crimean Khanate out of Russian territory, and actually had turned into a fairly decent leader. So some of the boyars send a letter to Ivan the Terrible, and they say, look, man, here's the deal. We really like your son. Could you, put him in charge? And what they meant here was, would you put him in charge of the military? Because he does seem to have a fairly decent mind. He's likable. People seem to follow his command. And we need somebody that can lead the military. We need somebody that we know is going to be a strong hand on the tiller. And the way that Ivan interprets this is the boyar saying, we hate your guts. We'd rather have your son. Would you abdicate again so that we can put your son on the throne? And this just makes him real mad. And the next day, his daughter-in-law, so this would be his son's wife, is walking through the palace, which they had rebuilt by this point. And she was pregnant with what would be his grandkid. And she makes a remark, just kind of an offhand remark. And Ivan was so mad about this idea that he might get deposed for his own son that he beats his daughter-in-law so badly that she miscarries. And this, of course, as you might expect, causes a bit of a rift between father and son. So after Ivan Jr. finds out that dad has beaten his wife to the point of almost death and has effectively killed his grandkid, Ivan Jr. goes to confront dad. And he's like, what the heck, man? What are you doing? And he's like, I'm mad. I want my way. And you better shut your mouth. And Junior was like, dude, for real, this is too much. You need to back the heck down. So Ivan starts beating his son with his cane and cracks his skull open and kills his own son. So, yeah. Not such a great move there. I don't know if that's an assassin, but we'll count it because, yeah, I guess. It's messy. Sounds perhaps like he was asking for it. Hey, Dad, why did you beat my wife so badly that it killed our unborn kid? Seems like a legitimate question that probably should have been answered without getting murdered. Seems like. Not winning the Dad of the Year award, no. So, yeah. Here's the problem with that. This only leaves Ivan's third son, Fyodor, as heir. And the thing about that is Fyodor was not right in the head. We don't know exactly what was wrong with him, but he had some sort of developmental disorder, or he had some sort of mental deficiency. He was described in history using the historical term as a simpleton. He did not have all of his mental faculties. But now this guy is next in line to be Tsar. And at this point, Ivan had been through 7 other wives without producing another son that was, going to be able to take the throne. I didn't go through all of the wives because honestly, it gets kind of heartbreaking. If you think Henry VIII treated his wives badly, go look up the 8 wives of Ivan. They don't make it out much better. There's just too many people that he kills to put in one stream. I'm trying to get the low points. I don't know. What's the opposite of high points? So at this point, Ivan was pretty destitute. The Livonian War was going really, really badly. There was no hope of him winning. So he actually had to write to the Pope to try to get the Polish and Lithuanians on board with a treaty. And when he signs the treaty with Poland, Sweden, and Lithuania, he basically gives up all of the land that he had taken and more. He ends up netting negative. After a war that lasted 20 years, he ends up with less land than he started. And this is sort of the last thing for him. He became really, really... Oh, yeah. See, that's the thing, though. Like, the Pope had more power in Europe than he did. So he had to find somebody that could negotiate this kind of from the middle. Right. So it's messy. After this loss of the Livonian War, the only other thing that he has going for him is basically this war over here against the sort of last of the Khanates that sort of run Siberia. And the year before he dies, some of the Cossacks are actually going to take over Siberia. But because the Cossacks are sort of in good with him, they effectively turn the land over to him. He's not even really running the campaign over here, because after he has to give up the war over here in Livonia, he's sort of a shell of a man. And the only thing that he really enjoys doing at that point is playing chess. He doesn't really run the day-to-day operations. Some of the boyars end up taking over that stuff. And in 1584, he is playing a game of chess with his only remaining real person that kind of can deal with him. And according to most story books, or most history books, he's going to have a stroke and die. Now, there is one unproven source that suggests that the boyars had enough of him finally and sent an assassin who strangled him, but that is not confirmable, and that is not something that we can definitely say is an assassination. But one way or the other, by 1584, Ivan the Terrible dies. And if you're wondering, like, well, who is this guy? Well, this is him sort of at the height of his life. This is a very, very famous photo of him. And if you were wondering when I said he beat his son with a cane, this is the sort of the scepter of the Tsar. And if you'll note here, it's got a really pointy end, and that's what he was beating his son with, like the little pointy end of it. So this is him sort of at the height of his life. It does look a lot like Bilbin, but I mean, to be fair here, Bilbin has a lot of this stuff, you know, to look back at. There's another photo right here that reminds me a little bit of Bilbin, especially with like the colors that he chose. This, by the way, is Ivan IV's granddad, for those of you that weren't with us. So this reminded me a lot of, especially the stuff that you did on like the cloak for Alhin Caregiver, David. That sort of floral pattern reminded me a lot of that. This is a cast that is modern. In the 1960s, the Russian government actually dug up Ivan's body and got his skull, and somebody did one of the facial reconstruction things. So this bust is a facial reconstruction of Ivan based on the very few actual photos we have, or not actual photos, but actual depictions of him and actual physical descriptions of him. So this is probably what he looked like close to his death. Yeah, Forensic Files, Russian Tsars. Now, this is what he managed to do, though. He more than doubled the size of Russia. Russia, when he took over, was about this right here. And he added all of this stuff and all of this stuff to Russia. So he left Russia in a much more powerful position. 7 extra troops if you hold it. Right? Sorry, wrong button. So he did leave Russia land-wise better. But did he leave Russia better overall? And that is a hard question to answer. And I would say no. And let me tell you why. Because when he died and Fyodor took over, Fyodor was not competent. And I'm not trying to say that to be rude. The kid just wasn't mentally competent at trying to run the country. And what that means is that the boyars, who had just been oppressed so savagely, all were fighting again for control. And when Fyodor ends up dying, not too terribly long after this, Russia enters a period of time that is effectively a giant civil war, where they kill each other. So his son's name is Fyodor, like this, but anglicized, that is Theodore, right? So the troubled times of Russia are yet to come. And for most of the late 1500s and early 1600s, there is a gigantic free-for-all. It's like a battle royale where all of the boyars are trying to kill each other and get to wherever they can get to. And what's kind of weird, and it might surprise you or it might not, but the family that comes out on top are the Romanovs. So this is actually one step removed from the Romanov dynasty becoming the power in Russia. Because, well, I mean, Ivan let them in when he married Anastasia. That was their in. They were part of the royal family. Fyodor was half Romanov. So they had a claim, and they had a stronger claim than just about anybody else did. So, all right. So that is Ivan the Terrible. And I hope that is everything you all dreamed that it could be, except for, maybe avoiding some of the horrible things that he actually did. But that concludes what I had planned for the night. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to run away, though. As always, if you all have questions about any of this stuff, or if you have channel points that you would like to redeem, or if there's something that I can do or say that would make your day a little bit better, just let me know, and we can hang around for a little bit more until I find somewhere. You need something lighter. Yeah, this is pretty heavy stuff, right? I mean, he is the terrible. He's not a nice dude. So, yeah. It's a nasty, nasty thing. Can you get a rank 3 with Russian rulers? Yeah, sure, go for it. There should be a little thingy there. Or eras in Russian history that aren't horrible. That's a little bit harder to do. Pre-Russian Russia. There should be a rank 3 in the channel point redemption things, aren't there? Yeah, there we go. Historical figures or events that didn't have a movie made about them, but absolutely should. Oh, that's a good one. I've actually got a script that I want to write. I've already got the whole thing set up. It's called Rubicon. And it's about Julius Caesar, but it's not about any of the stuff that people...
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
Tuna, thank you so much for once again making Brittany Spartacus. I really do appreciate that. That is way too kind. Okay, so let me give you my 3 and then I'll tell you what my movie is. The early life of Julius Caesar, which hasn't ever really been done the right way. The reign of the Emperor Heraclius in Byzantine Empire. This is in the 600s. And Iemitsu, the Tokugawa Iemitsu, his life needs a movie where he's the villain in the movie. The early part of Julius Caesar is because nobody ever focuses on that, but that's actually way more important than what he did once he became powerful. Like, he could not have done the things that he did when he was in power without doing the groundwork stuff first. And the movie that I want to do is basically him becoming the favorite of the Roman army and becoming the enemy of the Roman Senate. And anyway, the movie is effectively a master class story of him doing political machinations and pulling the wool over the Senate's eyes. And I think that would be fascinating because nobody really does that. Like, everybody that does movies about Caesar is always the big stuff. Like, you know, the plots after he's already in power and the stabbing stuff. My movie would not even get to him being a dictator. Like, it would end basically at him crossing the Rubicon. I don't know that. Ridley Scott, when he was actually good, Ridley Scott has not done a lot of good stuff lately. He's kind of been off of his game. Tokugawa Iemitsu should clearly be directed by Akira Kurosawa, but he's dead. And Heraclius should be directed by Denis Villeneuve because it's got lots of big wide shots that I think would be awesome. Caesar dressing. But the Caesar salad is not named after Julius Caesar. But I get the joke. Anyway. 3 rulers of Russia that were the best. Best rulers of Russia. Like, see, but best is such a hard thing. Like, is it like most successful? Or is it like the people that were not the horriblest? The least likely to be murderers. Okay, so in order of number 3, so number 3 is probably Alexander II. Alexander II was Tsar in the 800s, like late 1800s, and tried to do a lot of restructuring of the government to allow the serfs to have more freedom. He technically ended Russian serfdom, and he ended up getting assassinated for trying to be a little bit more... I mean, he wasn't a perfect individual, but a lot of the Russian leaders are pretty bad. Number 2, Peter the Great. Peter the Great was the czar in the late 1600s, like 1680s, until the early 1700s. I think he died like 1727 or something. I can't remember exactly. Early 1700s, like 1720s. He is number 2. Alex 2 Electric Boogaloo. He was a good guy. He did a lot to try to modernize Russia. Russia had fallen behind pretty quickly because of things like the Enlightenment happening in mainland Europe. Peter the Great brought a lot of education to Russia and helped try to modernize the life of people there. But to me, number 1 greatest ruler of Russia all time, easily, in my opinion, Catherine the Great, who ruled from, I think she ruled 1762 to 1796. I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right. She ruled for a while. She's going to be responsible for a lot of Russian growth. She's going to be a successful leader militarily. She actually has really good common sense suggestions. She doesn't get assassinated, even though she starts off ruling really young. A lot of young Russian rulers end up dying. They just get assassinated. Catherine the Great was also responsible for pushing Russia to modernize again. The modernizing stuff is a big deal. Russia was still really far behind, even though these people did a lot of the stuff that she did. But I mean, this might be kind of a hee kind of thing, but Catherine's a pretty cool woman just as a person. If you read, I've actually read a biography of her that I really, really enjoyed. It was great. And I'm probably a bit biased because the biography was so good. But anyway, so Alexander II, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great. 3 Russian rulers that didn't suck. So there we go. Okie dokie. Anybody want to do anything else? Otherwise, we can maybe go see where we's going to go raids. We might go raids, do some raids. You guys want to go raiding? Way to murder the joke, Shane. Look at that escargot. Ha 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 ha. What do you think of Catherine's biography? What did you think of Catherine's biography, oddly enough? I thought it was great. The one that I read. But I don't know if the one that I read is the same one that you read. What's the one that you read? Let me see if I can find the one that I read. Would you show me books? Yeah, I can't find it. I got it from the library where I used to work. I can't remember what it was called. It was really, I can't even remember who wrote it. You can't read? I guess the joke went over your head. Yeah, it totally did. It totally did. I have no concept of what the joke was. Maybe that means it's time to go. So let us go do a raid. And I think we're going to go raid Crush. Crush Builds is, well, I guess Crush is actually on a break right now. And he takes really long breaks. So I don't know if we're going to go raid Crush or not. Because he might be on like an hour-long break. let me just make sure that he is not actually here and they're just being silly and showing that he's on break. No, he is actively on break. Okay, so we're not going to go there. I want to drop you off on somebody that's on break and make them like run back from break. All right, let's see who else is around. Aha! Here we go. We will go raid Allie Briggs. Allie is a great artist who is a friend of the channel, has brought her friends here before, so we will go return the favor by bringing our eyeballs to her art. Allie is really great about answering questions and interacting with the audience. She's got a really great sense of humor. So we're going to go see Allie Briggs. And thank you all for hanging out. I know that this one was kind of a long go of things, but that's all right, because when we do viewer request, I always want to make sure that I get through all of the stuff that you ask for. So if we come back on Thursday at 1900 Central Standard Time, we'll be talking about what's going on in southern China. And that's going to be, will be southern China this week and be in northern China next week. So yeah, it'll be fun. Lots of assassinations, lots of crazy stuff going on Thursday. So come on by, have a good time. Otherwise, I'll see everybody later. And thanks for hanging out. So take it easy.